Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Breeze Time with Kathy. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving celebration. I know it's hard, though, to be away from your family. I wanted to share with you some pictures from a trip I took a few years ago to the Vatican museums. You know how crazy I am about history. I hope you enjoy it. This is a trip that I took to the Vatican Museums back in 2014. I know that's a long time ago now, 6 years, but I haven't been able to travel much, and certainly you don't travel at all now. But I was able to get tickets for an early entry, which meant that the crowds were much lower in the museum that day. Of course, when most people think of the Vatican, this is the image you get. And that is the correct, that certainly is the Vatican. After all, it's only about 109 acres. That's a fifth of a square mile. It only has 825 citizens. As we know, it's the home of the Roman Catholic Pope, Pope Francis at this time. But he's the head of the Roman Catholic Church and the spiritual leader of over 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide. But what I'm going to focus on, and there's so much more I could tell you about this trip, and maybe I will in future times, is Vatican City itself. As I said, just a fifth of a square mile. Where I'm talking about is the Vatican Museums. These are the Vatican Museums right here in gold, if you can see them. And they were founded by Pope Julius II in the 16th century. It has over 54 galleries and it ranks with the largest museums in the world. It has Roman sculpture, Renaissance art, 70,000 works, only which 20,000 are on display at any given time. There's 640 employees that take care of it. It's really pretty amazing. But this is kind of my personal favorites I'd like to share with you today. And you can see this is the Vatican Museum right there. And it actually is bigger than this. And right here is the courtyard you come into. And what I'm going to talk about first is right there. It's that bronze. That bronze is called this bronze pine cone, or the pigna. It's 16 feet tall. It dates to the 1st or 2nd century, so it's like a 2,000-year-old bronze. Originally, it stood in what was called the Campus Martis. It was the site of an altar made out to Mars, and after all, Rome, conquest, Mars was an extremely important god for the Romans. This area was used for military triumphs, for public assemblies, for leisure activity. Of course, it took on less and less importance after Christianity became the religion of the Roman Empire, and by the 8th century, it was moved to in front of the old St. Peter's. It was used as a fountain, and believe it or not, they had water pouring out the top and out of little holes from the piercings in the scales. But in 1608, it was moved to its current location because they were building the present day St. Peter's, which at the time was the largest church in all of Christendom. Now, also in this courtyard, this is the close-up of the pine cone. It really is very impressive. I had no idea it's standing outside and it's 2,000 years old, until I really started studying, because it's amazing how fabulous it still looks. But as you look at the courtyard, you can see there's more sculpture there. This is a more modern piece. It's a sphere within a sphere by Arnaldo Pomodoro. And it's supposed to symbolize the complexity and the fragility of the world. But I remember when I was passing through the courtyard, I heard an Italian guide who was leading a tour in English say it looked like the Death Star. off of Star Wars. Well, probably Greek and Roman antiquities are really one of the things that the Vatican museums are known for, that and its Renaissance art. But it has some of the best and well-preserved Greek and Roman antiquities in the world. I guess because Constantine and, well, even before Constantine, the Roman Empire collected them, and then Constantine inherited them, and many of them were donated to the church, and they remained in Rome even after the capital of the Roman Empire moved to Constantinople. Well, this is the hall, and it's pretty amazing that there's nobody on it, but I took this picture myself, and I was able to go up those stairs, which is pretty impressive. They hadn't put the ropes up yet. Now, this is the museum. There's so many things I could talk about, but like I said, this is just basically my personal favorites. And one of my personal favorites is this statue of Augustus. It's 6 foot tall. It was discovered in 1863 at the villa of Livy, who was the wife of Augustus. It's dated to about the year 20 BC, and it's really one of the most famous depictions of Augustus. It's very impressive because it shows him as young and strong, military leader. He's talking like an orator, and he's in full military regalia. If you just look at him, he's full of confidence and power. His breastplate right there shows his military victory over the Parthians. Tiberius, who was Livy's son, was a general and was largely responsible for that particular victory, which, considering she was trying to maneuver, she was succeeded in, lots of people say, maneuvering and getting her son, not Augustus's son, not a child of Augustus, but her son, Tiberius, to succeed Constantine to succeed Augustus as emperor. But that victory, it shows the victory. It shows the gods supporting Augustus and him ushering in a time of peace. And actually, there was a time of peace of about 200 years. It's known as the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. And it was quite an accomplishment to basically make travel on the seas relatively safe and free from pirates, to have roads that connected most of the known Roman Empire, and for people to be able to travel in relative peace and on good roads and on the relative safety of the Mediterranean. It's one of the things that sort of came together to help. It was one of the things that sort of came together to really make this the opportune moment for Christianity to spread so quickly through the Roman Empire, because travel was relatively easy, and that was part of what caused enabled Christianity to spread so as quickly as it did. But one other thing, man, I mean, this is really political propaganda at its best. Look at this. You see, he's barefoot. Only gods, statues of gods, depicted people barefoot. So here's Livy showing Augustus already as a god. And right here, you have Cupid riding a dolphin. Now that sort of would bring to mind to the Romans who looked at this Augustus's victory at Actium over Antony and Cleopatra that made him sole ruler of the Roman Empire. And Cupid was a son of Venus, and Julius Caesar, who, remember, Augustus is a nephew of Julius Caesar, claimed descent through Venus. This really was a portrait, a statue, that was just filled with encoded with political propaganda. It shows his connection to his past, to the gods, to his role as a military leader, the bringer of the great Roman peace, the Pax Romana. Now, when it was discovered, it still had paint visible on it, and it was extremely well preserved. Using modern microscopic analysis, we find out that it was originally painted, as were we've discovered all the ancient Greek marble statues were almost all painted that we know of. The Parthenon was painted. They apparently used this beautiful marble that we love and simply as a mold to to carve the detail into the statue, and then they painted it. And this is a reproduction using paint analysis of what the original statue looked like. It's when it was polychromed. And this is what it looked like when the statue was first completed in 20 BC. Yuck. I mean, yes, it brings out the details and the things like the shield, but I have to admit, I'm spoiled. I like my beautiful Roman marble, and my Greek and Roman marble. Now this is the Apollo Belvedere. Belvedere is the part of the Vatican where this statue was displayed back in Renaissance times, and it's still in the Belvedere. It's actually a Roman copy, and of an earlier Greek statue, which dates to about 1200 to 1400 BC. The original was not made of marble; it was made of bronze, and it was carved about 350 years earlier. Well, no, about 350 BC by a Greek sculptor. This particular copy was uncovered in central Italy in the 15th century during the Renaissance, and it had a lot of influence on Renaissance art. All this newly discovered Greek and Roman art that was found, these statues, they were definitely something that had a lot of influence. Now, the lower part of the left hand were missing, and when it was discovered, and a student of Michelangelo in 1500 or so, 1506, I think, in the early 1500s, went ahead and reconstructed the hand to have this, the right arm. Wait, which is right? Okay, I'm looking at it. It's this one is right. But anyway, an interesting fact about this statue is that Napoleon collected it in 1794, and it became part of the Louvre, the collection of the Louvre. But after the fall of Napoleon in 1815, it was returned back to the Vatican. Now, the detail on this is exquisite. I can't imagine what the original Roman bronze looked like, because in general, the original bronzes of the original Greek bronze, in general, Greek sculpture was considered superior to the Roman copies, but I can't imagine it. Guess I just don't have a good enough imagination. Now, this is called the Belvedere torso, and it was the pedestal reed made by Apollonius, son of Nestor, an Athenian, and it's really very impressive. It's known that this torso has fascinated Michelangelo. It also was drawn by Rubens, and this is the inscription that said, see, this is an original Greek sculpture, not a later Roman copy of a Greek sculpture. It's powerful, it's impressive. This particular drawing of it was made by Rubens, and it truly is impressive. And you can see that it influenced Michelangelo. This is a picture of St. Bartholomew from the Sistine Chapel's Last Supper. And when you compare it to the Belvedere torso, you can see the influence that this torso had, this ancient Greek sculpture had on Michelangelo. And it also affected the Renaissance period tremendously. Well, those were pretty much my super favorites from the Greek and Roman galleries. I want to move on to the Hall of Tapestries. I have to admit, these tapestries were fantastic. These are Flemish tapestries that were made in the 16th century. That hall I showed you back there was actually 250 feet long. And these were based on drawings by Raphael and his students from episodes of the life of Jesus. And then the Flemish, and then it was woven into tapestries, which are just exquisite. And of course, you'll recognize many of these. They've been so famously reproduced. This is the Ascension of Jesus. Right here, you have Jesus's resurrection, coming out of the tomb, all glorious, and the Roman soldiers collapsing to the ground. It truly is a spectacular. I mean, to think this is a tapestry, to me, it looks like a painting. I just don't, there again, I was in awe of the skill of these weavers, that they could create something so beautiful. And it's huge tapestries. Well, then came the Hall of Maps. This is a great hall, let me tell you. There are so many different things. This is a big, long hall. On the walls, you see there's 40 different maps. And you've got to remember, maps were important, and they weren't all that easy to get your hands on, accurate maps. But these were the most accurate maps of the day. This is probably one of the most impressive ceilings, though, that was ever painted. The maps, I just want to tell you, the maps are absolutely spectacular. If you look at this hall, it's just beautiful. Look at all the lining of the maps and this beautiful ceiling. It really is wonderful. And if you take time to look away from the ceiling and the maps, you can see out into the Vatican gardens from here. But this, for example, is a map of Italy and Corsica and Sardinia. And you can see it's really beautiful, considering this was painted. This map was done, in the, I think it was done in about the 17th century. I mean, the 1600s, 1700s. It's just amazing. Look at this thing, this depiction of Venice. Actually, they say that this is an accurate depiction of Venice, and you could use it to guide yourself around the streets and canals of Venice today. That this is still very, very current and up to date in the depiction of Venice. Of course, here's the Grand Canal that weaves through Venice and all the other things. It's one of the places in Italy I haven't been yet. I just haven't had the opportunity to see as much in Italy as I would like. But the ceiling is really, really spectacular. And I have to admit, I was impressed. You could probably spend a whole day going through the ceiling. See all these panels? Each panel tells a different story. Look at this one. See that right there? That's a whole story about a saint. This is actually an episode. If you read it right here, it's St. Anthony of Padua, actually, and it took place in Portugal. And what happened was he went to this town that was supposed to be full of heretics, and he was going to preach to them and try and convert them. Well, they wouldn't listen to him, and they mocked him, and they made fun of him. So he walks away from them, and he goes to the shore of I don't know whether it was a lake or a river, but he goes beside the water, and he starts preaching to the fish. Well, all the fish, you see, supposedly the fish came up to listen to him. And believe it or not, the people who wouldn't listen to him before came to see what in the world he was doing, and they began to listen to what he said. And it ended up that a large crowd gathered around. They listened to his sermon to the fish, and the whole town supposedly converted. Tells a whole story. And there's panel after panel like this down through these rooms. It's in the ceiling. It's absolutely gorgeous, just gorgeous. But by far, I mean, for what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to end, I'm not even halfway through the museum, and of course I only hit the high points, but the Raphael apartments, just spectacular. It's a suite of reception rooms, and originally they were believed to be the private chambers of Pope Julius, but right now it's part of the Vatican Museum. And together with these paintings by Raphael, and then in the Sistine Chapel, the paintings by Michelangelo, both commissioned by Pope Julius II, were considered just the height of Renaissance art in Rome. And after the death, now Raphael was young when Pope Julius commissioned him to paint these apartments, and after the death of Pope Julius in 1513, Leo X continued the work. And the work wasn't completed until after Raphael's death, when the assistants completed the work. The first room is called the Room of Constantine, and the centerpiece in the ceiling of this is the broken idol. And what you see here is a pedestal, and there, lying on there, is a broken up marble idol that has been knocked off the pedestal and replaced by the cross of Jesus Christ. And what it shows is that the triumph of Christianity over paganism. But the whole room is, of course, and there it is in the ceiling. But these pictures around the side all depict great moments in the life of the Emperor Constantine. Remember, he lived in the 300s. First, you have the vision of Constantine. And here we have, on the eve of the Battle of Melville Bridge, this was a battle that took place in 313, on the night before this battle. And it was a key battle because the victory in this battle would make him sole ruler of Rome. He saw a symbol in the sky, and it said, "By this symbol you shall have victory." I think, yeah, you shall conquer. By this symbol you shall conquer. And he was inspired. He was not a Christian, but his mother was a Christian, and he was inspired when he saw the symbol. Here it's portrayed as a cross, and he had all of his soldiers painted on their shields, and he had banners made, and he won the Battle of Melville Bridge. And you can see there he is having this vision. Now, actually, most scholars believe that the symbol he saw was not a cross, but the Chi Rho. Remember, this is just the year 313. And in the year 313, a cross was still used as a symbol as Roman execution, and really had not become the predominant symbol of Christianity at this time. It was associated with a degrading death. It was used, but it just was not used as widely as the monogram of Jesus, which is the Chi Rho. And those are Chi and Rho are the first two letters in the name of Christ when spelled of Jesus Christ when spelled in Greek. And actually, in 324, that's 11 years after his victory at Melville Bridge, this Christogram, or the Chi-Rho, becomes the official standard of the Roman Empire. So that most scholars feel like it supports evidence that this is the symbol that he saw in his vision. But this is a very impressive room, and as with all Renaissance art, it is just overwhelming. It tells entire stories in art, and that's what art was about, was to tell history, to remind people of the glory of, and it would have references to gods and references to other stories. It was very common to have that because it would help tell the story and tie it together. And once again, here we have the broken idol and the symbol of Christianity, because that is what, in the 15th century, was considered the greatest accomplishment of Constantine, was that he established Christianity as the predominant, as the official religion. Not only at first he decriminalized it, and then later, it was made the official. A few decades later, it was made the official religion of Rome. Now, this is also here in the Battle of Melville Bridge. You see how spectacular Raphael's painting was. It catches all the chaos and the bloodshed and the gore of battle. You really see it. But here, shining in the middle, is Constantine on his great white horse, and he's clearly being victorious. Do you see the bridge there? This was the Battle of Melville Bridge. But I have to admit, the painting is spectacular, but the war scenes are extremely realistic of the battle. But the angels are there with a sword. They're also supporting and fighting for Constantine. And here it shows his standards, which would have usually been the Roman eagles, but now they're topped by a cross, which is the way in the year 1500, in the 1500s, it was seen that he had brought in Christianity. It just tells the whole story. Now, this is another interesting one. This actually is the Room of the Fire of Borgo. Now, this is depicting the fire of Borgo, and if you look at this right here, the fire in the Borgo was a part of Rome. And you see right here that there's this horrible fire, and up here you have Pope Leo. That's Pope Leo the Great. Pope Leo the Fourth, and he stopped the fire by blessing the city. With a prayer and a blessing, he stopped the fire. One of the things I found real interesting is, you know how I said that Raphael and Renaissance art usually echoed great other stories? This scene right here is probably a scene from the Aeneid. And you have the hero carrying his father. See, his father is an ill and old man with his son and wife, and they're escaping the city of Troy in the story of the Aeneid, the burning of Troy. And so they compare this fire in the Borgo to the horrors that everybody associated with the burning of Troy. Now, the importance to Rome about that was this boy right here becomes an ancestor of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. So these are the founders of Rome, basically, fleeing Troy, and then they'll head over to Italy. That was the way it was seen. It's really the pathos and the whole idea, this woman handing down a baby and people clamoring over the walls to escape the fire. And here's Pope Leo blessing the city, and it will indeed stop the fire. I told you about this, that this was a son of Venus carrying his father and escaping with his son and his wife, and they are the ancestors of that. But I mean, look at the father's skin. He's old and weak, but still he carries him from the city, from the burning city. Now this is the room of Heliodorus, and it was commissioned by Pope Leo. And what you have is, and what this room commemorates, is Leo the Great, when he went out and met Attila the Hun in 452. Supposedly, he convinced Attila to turn back from his invasion of Rome. And the story that they tie that to is St. Peter in chains, being released by the angel. And then also he talks about, they have St. Peter, Raphael shows St. Peter hovering over Attila with a sword as he's confronted by Leo and is told to turn back. It really is extremely powerful. And here's another powerful image. I mean, look at this. It tells the whole story of Solomon and displaying his wisdom and deciding between the two mothers who they come running, and one woman says, one woman has a dead child and one woman is holding a live child. And the woman holding the dead child said, "This is not my child, it belongs to the other woman. Her child died during the night and she swapped it for my living child. Please give me the child back." And Solomon in his wisdom says, "Okay, we'll divide the child in half and give one half to each." Well, then the woman who had brought the dead child and claimed the living child for her own, she says, "No, no, no, give it to the woman. I want the child to live." Whereas the woman who brought the living child said, "Fine, go ahead and cut the child in half." And in his wisdom, Solomon learned who was the genuine mother, because it was the one who was willing to give up the child to save its life. Tells the whole story. Oh, I love these things. Look, I know I've been going on. Here's Adam and Eve, and look at that nasty serpent, just looking just terrible to tempt Adam and Eve. It tells the whole story again. Now this is my favorite room. I think it's everybody's favorite room. It was originally the library of Pope Julius, and it was the first room completed by Raphael. It shows the disputation of this particular one. It talks about truth and good and beauty. It appeals to the highest human qualities. And this is the disputation of the Most Holy Sacrament, and it represents divine truth. And what you have here is a discussion. This was a huge point of doctrine in the Roman Catholic Church, probably around 11 or 1200. And they talked about whether or not, it's called transubstantiation, and it's about the nature of what happens during communion. And the views were different, but the whole point is that they show the heavenly court above. Here is heaven with Christ seated on the throne, with Mary and John the Baptist on either side of them, with many of the saints lined up. And this is God the Father with his wisdom holding the orb of earth as creator. and here is the Holy Spirit. And it's just, and then directly below it here on earth, what you have is, this is the Eucharist. This is the bread of the communion service, the Lord's Supper, and it's in what's called a monstrance, which is the way it is still displayed in the Roman Catholic Church today. And this is a debate about what is the nature of Christ's presence in the sacrament of the Eucharist. And they felt like that could only be determined through divinely revealed knowledge, and that's why it represents divine truth. Across from that, in the same room, we have a representation of the School of Athens, which is actually representing rational truth. Rational truth. And this is what man has been able to reason, and it's basically the school of philosophers, the School of Athens. And what's really neat about this is not only does he have this incredible picture of, here is Socrates walking along with Aristotle, and they're talking and debating. You have, with Plato. I think it's with Plato, but no, it's Aristotle. This is Aristotle, and this is that Raphael paid homage to a lot of the great artists of his day. Socrates actually has the face of Leonardo da Vinci. You have other groups here that I want to point out. See, that's Leonardo da Vinci's face. There's several different philosophers that are listed right here. There is over here with the olive branch on his head is arguing with the philosophers. With the olive branch is Plato. And then you have Pythagoras right here with his, this is Pythagoras right here writing in the book, and right next to him is Archimedes, and if you look on the slate, that's the Archimedes principle is listed right there. But you can see really how spectacular this is painted and just how wonderful it is done. Right here, you have a nephew of Julius passing through. You got to keep your political patrons happy, your financial patrons happy. And over here in this group, this is Pythagoras. No, this is this is I don't remember who that is. I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, this is Pythagoras, and that's Archimedes. As I told you, over here you have actually Michelangelo. Now this was a late edition because he's portrayed as a philosopher, and Raphael and Michelangelo were considered rivals. They were both getting these large commissions done by Julian, and they were in competition. However, Raphael got hold of the keys of the Sistine Chapel where Michelangelo had been working on the Last Judgment and the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and he sneaked a peek because nobody was allowed in there. And he snuck in, and when he was so impressed by the work that he decided to add Michelangelo to this. As a last minute, as a tribute to Michelangelo. This one right here is Diogenes. He's one of my favorites. And then the neat thing about Diogenes is you notice he's just sitting right there. Diogenes was a philosopher and one of the founders of Cynicism. He walked around carrying a lighted lamp in the daytime, seeking an honest man. He was ascetic. He was an ascetic, and he believed in living just as simply as possible. It is said that when he saw a boy drinking from cupped hands, he threw away the wooden bowl, and he said, "Why have I been weighing myself down with this unnecessary burden?" This is a story of that he was in Corinth, and he was in the city of Corinth, and Alexander the Great actually met him there. The account of Plutarch says, and Diogenes Laertes both recount, that they only exchanged a few words while Diogenes was relaxing in the sunlight in the morning, probably sitting on a step or sitting much as he's depicted here. And Alexander was thrilled to meet the famous philosopher. And then after they exchanged a few words, he said, "Is there any favor he might do for him?" And Diogenes said, "Yes. Stand out of my sunlight." At which Alexander declared, "If I were not Alexander, I should wish to be Diogenes." To which Diogenes replied, "Well, if I wasn't Diogenes, I should also wish to be Diogenes." It's amazing to think that he was truly happy in being who he was, where he was, with as little as he had, and living a simple life. Right here, this is actually the last slide I'm going to show you, because here we have a self-portrait of Raphael. He's included himself in one of these in this. Now, this is less than half of my favorite highlights from the Vatican Museum, but already I've gone over my usual time. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and there's so much more I could share with you. Well, the Vatican Museum is a huge place. I have lots more pictures. I can do a whole nother talk about it next time. So I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, I'm sure I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, God bless.